So I'm zipping through this modeling process pretty quickly because I don't really want to focus on modeling at this point, but I do want to make some smart decisions about how I'm arranging this stuff in space. So the reason that everything is stacked along the y-axis right now is pretty simple, and that's because really the torso is the thing that I want in the center of my space, okay? Because that's really going to be the center of this object, the center of the mass. And I'm going to name this. I'll just call this upper body, and I'll call this lower body. So now I have a little bit of reference about how that, what that is in the object manager. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the upper arm, and I'm going to move this and just kind of get that content more or less where I think it should be. Okay, now my arms are a little long, and I'll take care of that in just a minute. Okay, but I just want to get it placed where it should be. So the whole concept here is that I don't want to model both sides of this object. There's going to be complete symmetry in the object, and so what I want to do is just focus on one side of the object. Now, I have an interesting dilemma. I'm going to have two arms and two legs, and I need a right and a left leg. So which one's the right and which one's the left? Now, according to Cinema 4D, if we split our views, so if I go up here and click on this icon here, I can look at the object through the perspective view. Okay, I can look at the object through the front view, and I'll just go to display, and I'm going to tell it to use quick shading with lines, so I get a slightly different view. My models become opaque. I'll do the same thing with the right view. So I'm going to display, quick shading with lines. And if I look here, I can see that according to Cinema 4D, the right side of the object, I'm looking down the right side of the object. And so this arm is in the foreground, okay? According to the front view, this is the right side of the object. So in my book, this is going to be the right arm, okay, because it's on the right view according to Cinema 4D. Now, if you wanted to, be philosophical about it, and you're animating somebody, this would be their left arm, okay? And in selecting the left arm and looking at the right viewport, things might get a little screwy, a little confusing. And so I'm just going to adhere to what Cinema 4D is looking at in the foreground down the right axis. Okay, now this isn't a big deal if you goof them up, because we're not really going to keep track of things according to left and right arm. We're going to keep track of things based on which leg is forward and which arm is forward, or which arm is back and which arm is and which leg is back. So it's not hugely important in terms that we comprehend this, but for the sake of my presentation, this will be referred to as the right arm. So now, before I get into duplicating this, it is a little big. So I am going to go to the scale tool, and I'm just going to scale this down a bit. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the upper arm is selected. I'm going to the scale tool, and when I scale this, I want to scale it according to all three axes at the same time. If I roll over one of the axes, I'm restricting that scale just to one axis. I don't want to do that. I want to scale according to all three axes, and so I'm just going to roll my mouse over. I'm going to scale this down, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it roughly to where I think it should be. And I really want this hand to kind of sit up closer to, I want the hand at least to cross over the hip. It's still, a little long, but that's okay. I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. So that looks pretty good. So I have my upper arm. Now my upper arm, as I mentioned before, this is going to be my right upper arm. Now I'm going to grab the move tool, and the reason I modeled everything along the y-axis is because this object has been moved over on the red axis, and the red axis corresponds with the x-axis. And so what I can do is, if I look at the position here, I have this position of 114.331, and I'll just make this a little bit easier by getting rid of the decimal. So it's at 114 centimeters on the x-axis. That's the red axis it's moved over. If I move it in another direction, I can see that That axis is if I move it towards the other side of the body, that axis is reducing. That value, that X value is reducing. And so what I could do is I'll Command C to copy. I'll Command V to paste, and I'm going to take this new copy that I have, and I'll call this left upper arm. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a minus sign in front of the X coordinate, and that'll give me exact symmetry. Okay, and the reason it gave me exact symmetry is because the torso or the upper body is exactly on the y-axis. So I can use that the reference to the y-axis, or more accurately, the position of the x-axis in moving stuff left to right to get exact symmetry. Okay, now if I had moved my upper body along the x-axis, this technique wouldn't apply. And so before, if I knock things out of whack, I can always go back into my objects and select those objects and just zero things out according to X, according to Z if I need to. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to grab my upper leg and I'm going to rename this right upper leg. And I'm just going to move this over. Right about there, I think. Maybe a little bit further over. There we go. And I'll just make life simple and call this exit 55. I'm going to copy and paste. Let's try that again. Select my right upper leg, not my right upper leg. Right upper leg. And I'll Command C to copy and Command V to paste. And I'll just call this left. And I'll do the same technique. I'll just, I could eyeball this. I could move it over and say, yeah, that's about right. But it's only going to be right if it's exactly -55 in this case. Okay, so looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I do need a head and a neck, but otherwise I think this is coming along. So I'm going to save what I'm working on. I'm going to File, Save Incremental again. So when I say that I'm saving, I'm actually going to File. I'm saving first, and I'm choosing File, Save Incrementals. So I'm going to focus just for a little while on my rig here, okay? And I want to make sure that my upper leg functions properly, okay? And if my upper leg functions properly, and my lower leg functions properly, okay, I could test both of these, the left upper leg and the right upper leg. But what I want to do is I want to build a really quick parent-child relationship between the legs and the lower body and the upper body and the arms. And so what I want to do is I want to identify the upper body, and I want to get my left upper arm inside the upper body. I want to get my right upper arm inside the upper body. And holy smokes, I'm completely confused. My object manager's completely getting out of control, and that's okay. I'm looking at the upper body. It has the right upper arm in it, the lower hand, the lower arm, and the hand. And what I can do is I can click this little minus here and just start to collapse these down so that it's not so confusing to look at. Okay, so I have the upper body. Make that capital. I have the right upper arm. I have the left upper arm. Well, that should be in the upper body, and it appears that I missed. And so let me just drag and drop that back in, and I can tell because there's a line here, and this line is telling me that the upper body and the left upper arm are at the exact same hierarchical value or hierarchical level. So I'll just drag that and make sure it's in the upper body. And so what I have now is I have the left upper arm and the right upper arm, and they're both inside the upper body. And I can give that a quick test by grabbing the upper body and rotate, and all the stuff rotates with it. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with lower body. I'm just going to take my legs and put those inside the lower body. Again, if collapsing these hierarchical menus helps you organize this, then that's a good way to go. So right now I have the upper body, and the children of the upper body are the arms. And we already had those rigs figured out. So that's the basic hierarchical relationship here. I'm going to save once again what I'm working on, and we'll talk about building a head and a neck in the next presentation, and we'll get our environment set up, and we'll start talking about the mechanics of motion.